we are going to go ahead and start moving towards game number 4. Picks and bans are now on the screen. Rival will be in the first pick spot, and now their back's up against the wall because not only was it a loss, but Taco, that one was relatively quick, and they didn't have very many options at all in that game to feel like they were playing back. It can be tough to reset mentally after that kind of loss.
But zero surprises. This is a ban that I wanted to see in the last game, and I think that Rival aren't going to take their chances with any longer. Of course, they are now back into that first pick selection option, which makes things a little bit easier because I'm kind of on aggro's side here. I think that being second pick right now is detrimental in competitive play because
it's tough.
You're mandated to ban Freya, Arthur, it feels like, and Bologna has just been so influential for a lot of Pittsburgh Knights compositions. Deathwalker has a 100% win ratio, to put it into perspective.
He's been very, very strong on this Bologna pick, as King Arthur, of course, is banned out as well. Aggro was floating the idea, of maybe allowing through both of these picks, the King Arthur and the Freya, and seeing if maybe you can get one of those that Freya is good enough to be able to keep up with some of the output that King Arthur's doing, or at least that was sort of what his thought process was. But it's so difficult. We saw what Fineokay was able to do with it, what Variety's been able to do with King Arthur. It really does feel like uniquely strong, and you want to make sure that you're not giving up one by itself, meaning the Freya or either one.
I think it's also tough trying to go with the fire versus fire mentality because Freya and Arthur, to me, are gods that both have different power spikes as well. And King Arthur, I think, as a whole, is he just
12, 21,
it's hard to say which one is the best god on any given day because there are games where I think King Arthur looks better than Freya and vice versa. But I just think that no other god in Smite can do what King Arthur does right now because no other god in Smite can stay alive long enough to deal the amount of damage that Arthur does.
He's able to stick in those fights quite strong, so certainly got to take him off the table. It'll be the Achilles first picked for Rival. And this has seemed to be, if there's any identity I can tell throughout these picks and bans for Rival, it's that their team is very flexible, that a lot of their players can play just about anything in any role. The Achilles could be reasonably to Mike, could be for Twig, could be for Fineokay. And they like holding on to that ambiguity as long as they can in these picks and bans and staying flexible, especially because PandaCat plays such unique picks that they can even wait to pick his stuff last if they have to.
The Discordia, though, PandaCat's finally going to get his hands on a mage of his choice, I think, because this is one that Pittsburgh Knights has been consistently banning away from him, and Rival still unfazed by how that last game went and how rapidly it deteriorated for them. They're still going to take this Fenrir, and it's still relatively open as to whether or not it's going to be a Fenrir in support or even in the solo lane, possibly even jungle.
It's very, very much open, as Zyrhoes has the outposh for himself as well to try and combat this Discordia in the middle lane. They're going to pair that up with the Sylvanas. That might be why they picked this outposh so quickly, is so that there wouldn't be that punishment onto the heal on the Wisps. Once it's out there, outposh can punish it quite well. So instead, pick the counter for yourself, and then pick the actual one that you want, the Sylvanas. Some good lane pressure, some good control in these fights.
Sylvanas is also, I think, a really strong choice just because his ultimate, combine that alongside of emptying the crypts, you get like the same effect that you do whenever you see the Sylvanas Hu Yi dual lanes. It's just that Sunbreaker into the Wrath of Terror. It's just so much damage all at once, everybody getting knocked up, and they don't really have anywhere to run, plus the dot damage that's applied. So I'm seeing a lot of dot damage right now from Pittsburgh Knights. Xbalanque, Outwash, Sylvanas, these are all ticks over time, and something I think that could be kind of cool to see, but I feel to be a little bit unlikely is maybe even like a Thanatos possibly from adapting, but it's just so unlikely that I think he goes for that god. I just would love to see it because I think with all the dot damage, execute range threshold would probably be pretty easy to meet.
That's right. He wouldn't be able to find him too hard. Thanatos, maybe something like the Ao Kuang too. We'll certainly see. Though they are already maybe having all their magic damage secured, they don't want to lean any further into it. As now Rival consider where they want to go with this next ban. Still a lot of strong picks up. They haven't gotten anything on the side of Knights yet for adapting from what I'm seeing here, and likely not their solo laner, though I suppose there's a chance of us can go over there. So they might want to try and turn their attention towards the jungle, Arachnes, Bakasuras, that sort of thing. But they're going to take this Raven out, which adapting has shown a little bit more favoritism towards today.
I think the Raven ban a little bit necessary as well if you want PandaCat to have any hopes of survival inside of this mid lane. Things are going to be tough enough as is, I think, because Discordia doesn't have nearly the same amount of range as Outwash, so PandaCat's going to have to step a little bit more forward throughout that laning phase anyway, and that's already putting him into a pretty vulnerable spot. So it's really going to be up to CaptainTwig and PolarBearMike, I think, to try and keep PandaCat protected at all costs.
Geb ban now coming out from Pittsburgh Knights, so they're not sold that this composition from Rivals locked in just yet. Potentially worried even about a Geb solo at this point, so they're going to take that one out. Meanwhile, a Wheelish comes through. Another strong assassin that could potentially be punishing Fenrir if he's going to be leaping in a lot, so they want to take that one off the board.
A little bit of a, it's more of like a niche ban, I think, against Adapting, because he also would have had a little bit of setup, I think, from the Sylvanas and Discordia Fenrir, 2 out of 3 gods that Rival have in their draft, already pretty dependent on their leap escapes. So I think it's just probably better for, I think, Rival's state of mind, not having to worry about some random gravity surge from over the wall.
But now Pittsburgh Knights have such a scary draft, and they're taking away a lot of the safe options like the Geb, and now they can start to punish with this Bakasura as well, who can be the punisher in the early game, who can strip away your farm, and even if you are able to hold even with them and make it late, then you're dealing with a Xbalanque ultimate, Opwash Empty the Crypts, and a Sylvanas in your team fights. I mean, it's starting to get tough for Rival to find their way to fight through.
Arkyll is getting his signature ROM locked in place, though, and I think this ROM pick is also a very smart god selection choice because he's got relatively safe lane clear, and not only that, but Astral Barrage. That's going to be so crucial when trying to survive against this Bakasura, because Arkyll, you're just going to have to buy as much time as possible for the team to respond. And Rival, while they might not necessarily be able to save the life of their hunter, I'm sure that they might at least be able to punish Pittsburgh Knights in the process.
At the very least, force them to commit more to getting that kill onto the ROM, and that's something now that Arkyll should be able to have at his disposal. Still one last pick selection to go, and at this point, with Fenrir and Achilles on the board, it could be for any role. I think it's still up in the air. You want an Arachne at this point, Taco. Why Arachne?
I say Arachne because she has a lot of that early game presence.
So does Rat, though, yeah.
So does Ratatoskr. You're right, Finch, and I think that the Ratatoskr might even be a little bit better here than the Arachne because he's just going to be able to sit on top of Zyrhoes. That outwash cannot feel good right now, seeing that Rata on the map. And I think Arkyll as well with the Astral Barrage, when the team fights break out, what I'm expecting to see a lot of is Arkyll looking to clean up.
That certainly could be the case if he's able to if they get them low enough to where he can go up into the air and try and find those last few shots. The Knights are hovering on this last pick, and they are going to lock in. The Osiris has been selected, very likely going to be going over to Deathwalker in the solo lane. And this is good because the Bellona was banned away very early on this game by Rival. Try and force him onto something else.
I think that's just a necessity at this point, but both of these teams trying to shake it up here as we head into the 4th match, Finch. I'm excited to see how both of these compositions pan out.
Yeah, we're getting very close to being able to start this action now. Rival with their comp locked in. Pittsburgh Knights, their backs against the wall. Rival absolutely have to find this win and go ahead and get over to the caster so they can start getting us into the action.
Thanks a lot, John Finch, as we head into game number 4. I'm excited. I think Arkyll's going to go off here off of the back of a Fenrir support.
Yeah, you've been saying that ever since he locked in the ROM. This is a good opportunity for him to do so. There's plenty of setup and CC. However, there's also 4 physicals on the side of Rival, and so Pittsburgh Knights might be stacking that physical defense. It's putting a lot of pressure on your new role player in PandaCat in the mid lane. Though I will say this is the first time in 9 games that PandaCat is doubling up on a pick. He played Discordia yesterday, so we know he's playing it before, and he had an okay game on the Disco yesterday, so I think that he could pull it off, but he's got a lot of weight on his shoulders.
In your words, in your mind, Discordia here, where does she land on the aggressive scale?
She can, I would say she's pretty close to 50-50, maybe 40-60 on offense to defense. It's just that against characters like Opwash, she can play very aggressively because even a simple root does a lot to kill an Opwash. So if Zyrhoes ends up a little bit out of position, PandaCat can easily punish him. But she also has very good self-peel. She's hard to lock down. That apple is really good to kite with. And so I think that she can do both pretty well.
I agree with you. I think she winds up kind of somewhere like Isis, where you can be absolutely very aggressive. You can't just turtle. I don't think she's kind of gifted like an Opwash can, just sit all the way back. But there's a large spread, let's say from 4 to 10, if 10 is ultra aggressive, right? She can kind of play a lot of different styles. So obviously, if you are not just joining us, you've been watching the whole set, you know I want Panda to play aggressively. So I think Discordia certainly works out there. PolarBearMike on the Fenrir support.
He's starting at the enemy red buff with CaptainTwig. looks like Pittsburgh Knights were able to secure their own speed pretty easily, where PandaCat and Fineokay did Team Rival's own speed and just handed it over to PandaCat. So this is CaptainTwig going to try and play pretty aggressively in the early game, I'd imagine, just farm up for that Acorn and look to really be the aggressor with this red buff. He's going to do a lot of damage.
Yeah, a very different scenario from what we've seen the first couple of games here as PBM goes ahead and confirms the purple buff, taking away the golden experience and the buff itself, and getting away too. The reason I started talking about stripping golden experience is because I kind of expected Vote and EmilZy to be able to kind of grab them, but the route being used on the buff itself, no options to cut down the doggo.
And this has given Arkyll 2 full waves of XP and gold by himself, so he's a little bit ahead, about 100, no, a little bit less than that, about 70 XP per minute ahead of EmilZy and Vote. So now PBM's here in the duo lane. This is the most that both supports have been in the duo lane basically all day.
This is the most traditional start we've seen.
End up being a good one because Fenrir in lane is really, really potent. He's very easy to just get ahead with and be very aggressive with. And so I like that Mike is here in lane this time around, especially on with a god like Rom, who can also play pretty aggressively at times. An aggressive roll in and some chain slows with the arrows, it's hard to get away from.
Adapting and Zyrhoes making their way to the mid lane here. Solo lane matchup, front and center in our start couple of games. Last one, honestly, not so much. Fineokay versus Deathwalker now. The Osiris coming out. Very interesting choice here. Rarely do we see him, but here he is.
Just one of those gods that's really hard to go one-on-one up against, even for an Achilles.
Yeah.
Especially once Deathwalker finishes off that Berserker shield, it's pretty difficult to take the fight to him.
Definitely a character that I would call a fighter. We have the class warrior, right? But warriors like Nike aren't fighting you anytime soon. Osiris wants to hit all of his buttons and make sure he hits you all of the time. He is absolutely a fighter. So to go against the Fineokay, kind of an interesting look there. Achilles versus the Osiris. Aggressive lane to be sure.
Another purple buff invade. This one should be successful for Rival. Vote and EmilZy there, but not close enough. It's really cool to watch Fineokay up against Deathwalker because there's been a lot of hype surrounding Fineokay and how well he might do this year on certainly his best roster that he's been a part of. But also, Deathwalker hasn't played poorly this set. We've been saying Fineokay's name a lot, but I think that's the unfair burden that comes with being a star player, is that doing well isn't enough to get your name called that often. I mean, Deathwalker's played well so far this set, but we haven't really said his name because that's kind of what we expect from him.
I don't. Well, Zyrhoes has no mana. I'm still gonna walk away. I don't clap when the Ferrari beats a Honda.
Right.
Right? It just is what it is. But now, well, you got a Ferrari and a Lambo against each other, and it's exciting to kind of watch the race over here on the side lane.
Twig already forced out that ultimate from Deathwalker. Adapting knows that he can't stick around for too long, so Ku will go the way of Team Rival. First one that goes their way so far this game. But yeah, exactly. Fineokay is the up-and-comer in this lane, and so I think that he will, by default, get more credit, even if he and Deathwalker were doing the same amount. Yeah. That being said, I don't think they've done the same amount so far. I think Fineokay has done more so far for Team Rival. It's also been a much more dedicated effort from CaptainTwig to be over in the solo lane as compared to what Adapting has done so far in this set, but there's a good reason that we've been saying Fineokay's name a lot.
Which is also, talking about playstyle and jungler assistance, that's also Pittsburgh Knights kind of what they do. Deathwalker for a long time, going his years on old Team Rival, it's his playstyle, mentality, what you expected of him, whatever terminology you want to use. He's on an island, and he is incredibly strong and creative and will figure out a way to deal with it himself. That's always been his identity. It's always been what he's done. And I think coming to Pittsburgh Knights, they had to kind of learn these things about each other, and that being one of them.
Mike lurking, finds us on Vote. That gets the beats for free, but Vote very low, and Arkyll just needs one, and you know he's got it. First blood going to Rival.
And the follow-up knock-up on EmilZy. Here from the back line comes Pittsburgh Knights. Sprint is popped, and Adapting takes care of PolarBearMike. Despite the best effort, Zyrhoes going to pick up Arkyll as well, thanks to the ultimate. 2 for Pittsburgh Knights off of the rotation after Rival pick up EmilZy.
The early CC boots, the tank boots for EmilZy, just so strong in making sure that he ends up staying alive on that aggression. But now PandaCat's here. May have stepped a little bit too far forward. has the apple, but CaptainTwig's low on mana, and here comes Adapting.
Over everything. CaptainTwig
Wow,
finds an
Twig's
exit on the right-hand side. EmilZy falls down. PandaCat punishes the tree for walking a little bit too far forward.
That going back to the gank by CaptainTwig, after they get the kill on the vote, that's obviously very easy and well executed by Rival. But then CaptainTwig goes up into the Cosmos and doesn't recognize that there's multiple members of the Knights coming in. He should have been... I know he doesn't have a ton of time. He's got to knock up EmilZy before he gets too close to the tower and could therefore potentially escape. But I think he still had plenty of time to look around and see how many people were coming. And if he would have seen that Zyrhoes and Adapting were not just on the way, but very close, he could have told Rival to back up and gotten out of that fight without any extra deaths coming their way.
A little bit of a lack of communication there. Communication breakdown. Nice start, though, for Team Rival. I think this is exactly where you want to start. Vote ain't got no beads. It means he ain't got no life either. Arkyll starting off hot. 2 kills. Telling you, something in the air, baby.
But it's that Fenrir support, man. That Mike's pathing there, really, really good. He actually ended up missing the ward as well. He went really high up above purple buff and came through right at the entrance he's standing in now.
Yeah, you know, all jokes aside, as Team Rival get aggressive into the Fineokay ult. Love it. CaptainTwig still here. Satellite ultimate, making sure nobody wants to collapse the threat of the drop down from the rat. Very strong, but
all of this pressure in the mid lane is giving PandaCat, or all the pressure on the left side, I should say, is giving PandaCat free leeway in mid to play very aggressively. And I think that, as we've said numerous times this set, that's where his comfort zone is.
Yeah.
And so getting him to where he can step up onto Zyrhoes and put pressure him on the tower line is something that's really, really a good sign for Rival.
And it's again not a mistake. You know, I'm obviously giving a lot of credit to Arkyll, but I even said in the preamble that the Fenrir support's going to really allow this to happen.
Sure.
PolarBearMike's playing out of his mind, and credit to, again, Coach Slaney and the rest of the squad. You draft this aggressive lane to do exactly what you highlighted, allow PandaCat to be a little bit more comfortable in what he's able to do. I mean, Deathwalker versus Fineokay is going to be a much more demanding lane than what we saw earlier, so Fino's not going to have the luxury of being able to rotate like we saw earlier. So PolarBearMike has to be in that fill spot, and just really, really intelligent composition here.
Great pull on the CaptainTwig. That dot will be enough alongside the dot from EmilZy. Twig gets eradicated off of the pull.
Real talk? Oh my goodness.
No props for eradicated? Come on, man.
Man, you're just a little too mousy with it. Ultimate out of PolarBearMike, lining up EmilZy. And, oh, there it is! PolarBearMike takes a bite. He's all bite, even though he gets the bark.
No, he's all bark even though he gets the bite.
No, he's not
really
all
good.
bark. He eats the bark because it's a tree.
No, but he's now all, you are what you eat. He's all bark.
Oh, that's next level. I'll give you that.
Thank you.
Deathwalker. Fineokay trying to chase him down. PandaCat here as well. You just went 2 steps. I went 1 step. He's got the bite and the bark. It was 1 malapropism. Adapting here, trying to chow down on 2 separate players. Arkyll trying to play defense for his support. But now that the Hunter's joining, it's going to be a little bit more interesting. Confirmed kill,
no.
not there! Twig, you've got to hit that!
The blink, just too good from Adapting. And then again, EmilZy pulls him in. Good stun, and that'll be enough to get Twig out. Vote actually used his beads preemptively because he thought that CaptainTwig was coming for him instead of going for what Twig thought was a free kill. But Arkyll's decision-making to stand his ground, he's got to just trust that Twig is either getting that kill or Adapting's leaving. He instead tries to throw a couple astral arrows to the wall, where if he just waits and backs up and lets Twig handle the team fight, he has a better chance of surviving. Not saying he would have, but he would have had a much better odds at ending up walking out of there.
I agree with you for sure. For sure. Calling a spade, though. Twig has to hit that. Blink comes, sure, it's after the fact. You got to hit that. Rough start for CaptainTwig, 0-1-1. Successful plays throughout the rest of the series, though, so perhaps just a rare mistake from CaptainTwig.
Still has good pressure in this duo lane because of his presence, though. I mean, Arkyll and PBM have been a big part of it, sure, but CaptainTwig's constant presence on this left side has been a real factor in getting Arkyll and PBM ahead.
The level lead's also nice as well. Twig a little bit ahead of adapting. PandaCat a little bit ahead of Zyrhoes as well. Zyrhoes just now digging number 11. So with that very slight lead, Team Rival going to push up. About 2,000 gold as well. There's the red buff invade. PolarBearMike looking at Zyrhoes, and Pittsburgh Knights going to respond to that. Arkyll from a distance can! Yes, he can! Zyrhoes at the absolute range. Arkyll finds it. It's a 1-for-1, making a 2-for-1 as votes on a killing spree. Arkyll in trouble, surrounded by enemy jerseys, picks one up before he falls down, but it's a 3-for-2. Twig's going to join the ranks in the coffers. And with CaptainTwig falling down, 4 players on the bench. Pittsburgh Knights, they've got a lot of basic attack damage with adapting. They are going to look for the gold.
The Sylvanas healing, the first few buff invades go pretty well. EmilZy doesn't have boots yet. He's not particularly tanky. Rival gets to play aggressively. But ever since EmilZy got tank boots, and now with his Lotus Crown as well, that's the only reason PBM doesn't legitimately one-shot Zyrhoes off the combo. Mike plays that fight pretty well. Even if he ends up dying, if it's Zyrhoes that he's trading out for, that's certainly worth his time. But Deathwalker's perfect rotation over to the red buff, which Fineokay does not match. He was walking back towards solo lane. And then, again, Arkyll standing his ground and fighting. Maybe he's thinking, I'm dead no matter what. Maybe I can make sure that we at least get 1 kill here.
Yeah.
I just don't know that I agree with that assessment. I think he's... The pings were there from Fineokay. He's saying, yo, watch out, Deathwalker's there, Deathwalker's there. And I think there was a path underneath the purple buff that Arkyll maybe could have taken in order to disengage.
I'm with you on the first one. That one I think was a little bit rough. Mike can't find left or right, so CaptainTwig can't really confirm anything. And Mike might die here. Nope. Not enough dot damage.
Hello?
A little bit rough. Fineokay looking to confirm things that shouldn't be confirmed at all. The double kill out of nowhere. And adapting in trouble as well will walk away. That was, let's call a spade. That was a bad play from Team Rival that Fineokay said, all right.
I got it. I'll hit the 2-man stun and then somehow thread the needle to get the execute onto EmilZy. And then, of course, he's going to keep it going onto Zyrhoes.
But that's, you know, we talk about Deathwalker taking some damage here. I like to call the solo lane the Swiss Army knife. And usually that's talking about team composition. I usually like to see, well, if you're tanky in the jungle, maybe you can go a little bit less so elsewhere. Arkyll in some trouble on the left side, jumped on and likely to fall here. Well, Fineokay picks up the slack in other ways as well, and I think that's very quickly we're going to see that Fino becomes a star of this team. Could very much be a realistic headline.
I without a doubt, agree with you.
CaptainTwig, PolarBearMike, and Arkyll. It's hard to outshine these guys, but, yo.
Finocchio's bringing it so far this set. There's no doubt about it. Got to keep it going, though, because this game is not even close to being completely in Team Rival's favor. The late game siege might be a difficulty for them just because of Xbalanque and Apuache. I mean, those are 2 ultimates that feel nearly impossible to siege into, and as long as Knights are nice and patient, they space those out, I think it'll be difficult for Rival to ever get a full 5-on-5 going their way easily.
Even EmilZy has a strong ultimate when it comes down to dissuading the siege. The Wisps with the Lotus Crown also going to help. And I don't recall the last time I willingly jumped into a Bakasura either. So it's definitely a little bit tough here for Team Rival, looking towards a siege situation, which is why their composition is built in such a way. This is a return to the pick orientation that we saw in the game that Rival won in game number 2.
I also love the way that Twig has built this game. The Soul Leader is one that's going to let him get involved in these team fights pretty well. Zyrhoes takes half his health immediately and has to use the beads. Arkyll's right there. Aegis doesn't save him either. Twig able to clean it up alongside Fineokay.
But there's the ultimate out of adapting, and PolarBearMike from the left-hand side looking for the jump. Can't find it. And the pull. EmilZy plucks PolarBearMike. PandaCat punishes EmilZy, but he saved his jungler.
Man,
what a play.
EmilZy's played so well. For a 1-in-4 game through 15 minutes, EmilZy has done nearly everything right so far. Really impressed with his Sylvanas. It's just that this really aggressive nature of Rival's composition, which, as you said, is something that might become their identity, is really looking good so far.
EmilZy, but that's always something that EmilZy has brought to the table. These plays that don't always wind up on the slash line, but wind up on the highlight reel.
But to go back to what Rival's doing really well, Twig's build is beautiful. He goes for the early Void Shield. It's not particularly cheap, but it gives him some protection against Deathwalker, means that he can actually box up against Vote a little bit. But it's also penetration that PBM can take advantage of and that Fineokay can take advantage of in the early game, whereas normally that doesn't really happen for you.
Not so much counter building just yet, as far as the concern that we were talking about. Fino setting up his support for a kill. That's a dozen for Team Rival. We brought up in picks and bans for physical, letting PandaCat be the lone magical dealer here. Pittsburgh Knights will build into that later in the game for sure. Right now, still focused on offense. Team Rival with a 4,000 gold lead, looking to stretch that forward. Oni Fury up just a little bit, which is why we see this positioning coming out from the purple squad. PolarBearMike uses ult on Vote, but the beads are good.
Perfect. But Mike's totally fine with that. The only problem is that he takes a little bit more damage than he probably wanted to, but he gets the beads away from Vote. And Rival is at a point where they don't need Gold Fury right this second. Let Twig split the map. Maybe he could even get a tier 2 here potentially, though. It looks like he might be just a little bit short on damage. And now you open up the map really nicely. I love the way that Twig is now giving himself over to just go get some farm. I'll start to lane. Fineokay, you jungle for me now.
And a big reason is because of the itemization. The Soul Leader online, CaptainTwig wants to build those stacks.
Yep.
Him and Fino can just trade out, no problem. The flexibility of this Team Rival squad, I think, is also very important.
Creativity
very
is something I brought up
Yeah.
a lot when talking about this team, and they're making it look pretty good. Twig looking to bring down Zyrhoes. Zyrhoes, no relics, but Rival does get the gold on the left-hand side.
Pittsburgh Knights now looking for the follow-up. There's a jump in from adapting, but everybody kind of fanning out. Nicely played by Team Rival here.
Good disengage right after the objective, and solid secure by them as well. Zyrhoes on the right side of the map is the best steal potential, and with him over there, then Gold Fury is pretty high percentage for Team Rival. But it's not just this Void Shield and Soul Leader that I love for CaptainTwig. It's that he goes for the upgraded shell. Against Bakasura, this is sometimes even better than Aegis, because not only does it end up blocking the first 2 auto attacks, that'll block even the true damage that's being applied, but also give you a little bit more health on the follow-up auto attacks after the fact, and it's AoE. It also allows Mike to not have to buy shell. Twig's early investment in this upgraded shell is very, very smart.
You got the shell. Mike has the horrific emblem, which I think is
also great against Bakasura.
Yeah, I think that's the utmost importance. You're going to slow the attack speed and just to straight up reduce the true damage by 35%. It's absurd. And then the addition to the shell block at the basics. Sprint as well. It's a nice. Those are the 3 relics I want versus Baka and CaptainTwig. Always, you know, I alluded to this earlier. A very selfless player is
Yes.
CaptainTwig, but let me reiterate, that does not make him a guy in the background whatsoever. Twiggy, absolutely an imperative part of what allows Team Rival to find wins.
Rival not messing with the Fire Giant just yet,
EmilZy.
and why should they? This tier 2 tower very low. They can just take 1 minion wave and potentially get it, but Fineokay not waiting for the wave. He's going right on Vote.
The long-range shots are both the mid lane mage and the hunter going to push the opposition off. Minions right here. Fineokay by himself, but here comes the back line. Help from CaptainTwig, and the tower is going to crumble. That was the main objective anyway. If Fino's going to trade out for a tier 2, I think that's fine.
Good stun, but the Knights not going to let this go too easily. No sprint, though. That's already down for EmilZy, and with Rivals spreading out, don't think the Pittsburgh Knights have a whole lot of options in order to track them down. Trading Fineokay for the tier 2 is fine. That is a big gold bounce he just given up because he was so far ahead, but
Sure.
to get that level of map pressure, now there's only 1 tower left standing for Pittsburgh Knights. That's a tier 2 in the left lane. They don't have a whole lot of places to run.
Still very scary here. I'm going to bring up the SK game from week number 1. Looked very similar. SK were up 5,000. Then they found themselves up 10,000. They were just winning the game. And then Adapting got a quadra kill on Bakasura, and his team walked in and killed the Titan. So that's the problem when you're facing against these characters that I call hyper carries. Bakasura, we see it with Kali as well. Get me to the late game, guys. Just get me there. We're going to be down 500 gold. I'll have 6 items as long as we can tread water, and it can still happen. So Team Rival look fantastic, and I think a lot of what they're doing could stop Pittsburgh Knights from that scenario, Ryan, but that always, always, always has to be in your thought process and in your mind when you play against a Bakasura.
PolarBearMike going aggressively onto EmilZy. Knock-up coming. That's onto Zyrhoes as Arkyll shots raining down on him as well, but EmilZy's knock-up only hits onto PBM. Good disciplined disengage. You get a bunch of relics from Zyrhoes. You get a couple ultimates out. And now you can re-engage again.
Double stun lining up EmilZy for just the raw basics as Fineokay puts a baker's dozen up for Team Rival. Now just zoning out. Deathwalker and Vote trying to filter in. PBM going to back to base. And he'll do so on the map. Pittsburgh Knights could have caught that. It doesn't look like they're going to push much of anything. Tier 1 tower being aggressed on by adapting, but Arkyll's here. He's going to roll into it. Is that the right call?
I don't know. He's going to have to use the Aegis, and still adapting is going for it. Arkyll ends up falling quickly, but adapting could be right behind him. PandaCat gets the final shutdown onto adapting. And that's what I'm talking about. Sometimes Arkyll's decision-making has been a little bit suspect. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, he gets PandaCat a shutdown bonus, but
no, I'm with you. That was as close to objectively the wrong call as I can say. Rolling into a late game Bakasura, probably really rough. Some of the other situations, maybe a little gray. That one, gray skies only. That said, silver lining, PandaCat does get a nice shutdown bonus. 3, 1, and 5 has his shard finished. A lot of penetration for him.
Wonder where he's going to go next with this build. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he goes for something like a Midgardian Mail to try and prevent the same fate that just happened to Arkyll from happening to him. This is the spot in Discordia in a lot of mage builds right now in this meta that feels a little bit lacking. What do you want in this spot? Maybe, honestly, the new Doom Orb might be a good call. It's pretty expensive, but you're going to be doing a lot of sieging in the near future. You would get a ton of power from it.
Doom Orb is nice. I like the idea of Shaman's Ring as well. Shaman's Ring stacks up extremely quickly in these late-game team fights, and PandaCat, a character, a lot of his abilities, you look at Unruly Magic, you look at the ultimate, you're going to hit multiple times as well. I mean, hell, even using Strife as a setup will put the debuff on those targets that you're going to follow up with more damage. So Shaman's Ring is an item that I like a lot, and I think there's a lot of mages right now that could use it.
Yeah, I don't particularly love it on Discordia, though it's not that different than Soul Gem,
right?
I would say, and that's the call here for PandaCat. I'd imagine that he had roughly the 23 to 2,400 gold you need for this item, and that's why he went for it, though I see a lot of Discordias really like it. I'm not a huge fan of Soul Gem on Discordia. I think that you really want on characters that are hitting multiple abilities in quick succession to stack up Soul Gem.
Agreed.
Or you want it on the character where you're only going to hit one big burst, and Nuwa is the perfect example, or Giannis, where you really just need that all-in damage on the next ability. The thing that makes Soul Gem okay on Discordia is that you often get incidental procs of it off of your one little balls that come out.
Nice pull from EmilZy one more time, and Fineokay trying to do it. Pittsburgh Knights on the retreat. It's also the conversation of 10% cooldown versus 10% movement speed on the Shaman's Ring that I was talking about. Discordia has access to some nice cooldown options as well.
And now he's at full CDR between the Mage's Blessing, cooldown boots, Deso, and the Soul Gem, and that always feels pretty good.
And also, it feels bad when you get rid of your Mage's Blessing.
Yeah.
And so this kind of 30% is a nice spot for a lot of mages. I don't think too many mages really need 40% or over it with a Chronos Pendant. I think those are very niche characters that want to sit there. PandaCat, though, on the disco. Very excited. 3, 1, and 5. Doing middle of the pack damage as well.
He's played well.
He really has. He really has.
But again, this is another game where the front line has been very strong. Just like we saw him play very well in the ISIS and in the last set yesterday. I think that in the games where PBM and Fineokay are doing this much work, it's very easy. Not to take anything away from PandaCat, because that's the game he's playing.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't do anything differently. It's just that I think that a lot of credit does deserve to go to PBM and to Fineokay with how well they frontlined this game, and Twig as well.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Not taking anything away, but I do want to celebrate Max here, because this is, again, it's his second match here playing in the mid lane on a big stage. PolarBearMike has literally won a world championship. CaptainTwig has made every land except for one. I'll give PandaCat a little credentials here as the Fire Giant started up and almost finished by Team Rival, but Pittsburgh Knights filtering in.
Ooh.
Arkyll changes targets and cuts down Adapting. Fire Giant still alive for the moment. Zyrhoes drops the ultimate, but Rival confirmed the Fire Daddy anyway.
Now the dive is on. Arkyll takes down Zyrhoes with those long-range shots. PBM going to focus out Deathwalker with his carries.
Beautiful.
As the other two, Fineokay and CaptainTwig, take down EmilZy. Rival, well, they rivaled the objective. They said,
They did.
Come get it. We don't really care if we get it because we're going to kill you no matter what.
That's something you talk about, like organization versus team. That's just on the banner, I guess.
I guess so.
When
It's
you-
in the contract.
When you join a Rival squad, they give you a coin and tell you to get used to flipping it. Team Rival trying to flip this game on its head. Still, 10 seconds till EmilZy's up, and that might be an issue, but Deathwalker goes down. Everybody looking towards the Titan now. 90% EmilZy about to
Ooh.
spawn in 5 seconds. Arkyll goes down. That's a big part of the damage dealing.
Yeah, Arkyll went down quickly, but the Titan is going down just as fast. Jumps there from PBM, and Rival forced the game 5.
Oh, man. Just had us down to the last moment. I really think that Pittsburgh Knights could have found a way to defend that Titan, but Rival come through, stretch it out all 5 games. And again, 2 victories, 2 compositions, and attention to aggression.
Now, the first game that Rival won, we were singing the praises of Fineokay a bunch, and he played very well in this game as well, but I think that PBM was the absolute difference maker in that game for Rival. He got ahead early on, was just never let go of the W key, and that's what you have to do when you're playing Fenrir support. Twig was there, and as I highlighted, I think his build was a huge part of why Rival had success on a lot of those red buff invades, and despite how well EmilZy played in particular on that Sylvanas, that Opwash pick for Zyrhoes, again, I think Zyrhoes has been awfully quiet so far in this set and in overall for the Pittsburgh Knights so far.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a little bit more from him in this game 5.
Well, as the players take a quick break, we just saw Rival kind of walk by and heads held high.
Yeah.
I think their confidence level going into Game 5 should be high. It's going to be a barn burner. But let's break down game number 4. It's Finch and Taco.
This has been back and forth, man. Rival come out their very first week of play against probably the 2 best teams in the league, minus Splice, the defending world champs, and they look this good. They've brought it all the way to a game 5 in both of those sets. Taco, what is it for you that you think in this match specifically that helped Rival cross that finish line?
I think it was ultimately just the team fighting was really solid from Rival. I think that they had really strong initiation. They had incredibly good disengages, and their target focus. Again, I have to bring this up, but the games that we see Rival closing out the games, it's because of the target focus being significantly better. And I gotta say, I love this whole Rom Ratatosker strategy that Rival were running because it just felt like such a nuisance for Zyrhoes to constantly try and keep track of whether he was going to have to jig out the snipes from Arkyll or if he's going to have to worry about this Ratatosker from Twig. And it just felt like Zyrhoes was constantly having to use this empty the crypts in a more defensive manner as opposed to probably the aggressive initiations that Pittsburgh Knights were hoping for.
What a big rotation over from Fineokay to set up that double. I mean, this really did feel like an all-around win for Rival. Fineokay played so well coming out of the solo lane and was able to set up a lot. PolarBearMike on the Fenrir was unstoppable, ruthlessly aggressive. Arkyll was there for the follow-up multiple times. The picks and bans for them is what's impressing me the most, Taco, throughout these 2 days. Is the way they can make these adjustments, the way they can play so flexibly with their picks and wait until the end to get the right thing they need. That Ratatosker at the end, I think it sealed the game for them that they got that pick near the very end of the draft and that Twig was able to play it so well.
It was just the right amount of punishment when combined alongside of the Fenrir that really closed this one out, I think, for Rival in that drafting stage. And even then, it wasn't necessarily a guarantee that this was going to be a victory for Rival. I think that there were definitely some moments that things looked a little bit shaky or questionable, largely because of EmilZy being able to challenge Rival so often with a lot of really strong Sylvanas pools and then adapting. Try as he might, though, this Bakasura has finally found its L.
Finally, and really, I thought he had a chance to turn the whole game around with that Fire Giant because Adapting did the classic loop around, dropped the Regurgitate on everybody, and I'm in the back going, oh, well, I guess this is it, another Quadra for the man. And they turned around and blew him up. Arkyll, man, turned around and swung and knocked his Bakasura out.
I wish I could have seen how much damage Adapting might have taken, though, from those magma pools that were forming around the Fire Giant because he went in at the exact same time that those pools were spawning. So his regurgitate just made them all collectively on that one spot. And I think even in that replay clip of Rival confirming the Fire Giant, you could see all of those magma pools just right below adapting. And so I'm curious if he ended up taking like 700 damage or so from that alone.
I think there's a good chance he took a lot of extra damage, more than what he was anticipating as we look in on Young Man Row. A lot on his plate now as he tries to figure out an answer to this Rival problem. And it's been such a swingy back and forth set so far. It's really felt like the team that was able to establish pressure in the early game is the one that's able to close these games out so far. The team who's able to get the competition that can fight early on and then bring it all the way through, even against teams with good siege defense. Xbalanque Opwash is great base defense. It's hard to push through that, but they never even had a chance.
And that's the problem, too. I think that if Pittsburgh Knights hadn't been so close, hope Twig's enjoying his orange, by the way. It looks pretty juicy.
My man's going to town.
Not going to lie. He's going ham. I've never seen somebody just bite into an orange.
No, he didn't bite through the peel. There's 0% chance he did that.
No, but, like, just look at it. He's, like, opened it. He's peeled it a little bit, but then he's just biting into the heart of it. Like, he's just not even peeling apart the pieces. He's an animal, dude.
Well, we have plates and napkins in the break room. We could agree. There's no need to be a degenerate here, Twig, but I mean...
He's just eating it all, dude.
The thing is, I think what it is that he licks his hands before he plays, right? So he wants that orange flavor is what it is. He wants that on his hands before he starts playing.
His mouse wouldn't slide. Extra grip, player grip, 200 IQ. I respect it. But we're getting back on track.
I'll break down anything. Ask me, I'll analyze it. Okay,
good. Back on track to what we were saying, though, before the whole Twig eating oranges debacle, and we are all judging you steeply, Twig.
That's right.
But I think that Pittsburgh Knights, had they not tried to contest that Fire Giant, might have fared a little bit better on the base defense. But even then, giving up a Fire Giant, though, always feels bad. So I definitely understand why they might have been a little bit baited out by adapting, probably thinking that adapting was going to be able to get at least a pick onto Arkyll.
I think that's it.
And then that would force the fight from Rival to drop Fire. But that definitely just did not go to plan.